Hello, folks. Peter Rampion Clark here. Very happy to welcome you to the real beginning of the series. This is Totem Zero behind me, this evolving creation, the idea of evolution and creation really working together. Totem Zero gives us the stillness only. So it's not going to be something that just pops out and slays your eyes, say. This is a very restrained design, but it is the foundation from which we will build up magnificent totems, which yield up mantras, eventually mantras. So let's take a look at Totem Zero. This is seed void, the stillness, undergirding everything. No vibration. Stillness really does mean stillness. Nothing moves. And therefore, if by the criteria that existence means something moves, it vibrates, then this really officially doesn't exist, but it is fully present. It's there. It is not part of space-time. It's outside of space-time, so you can't really say it exists. So that's I think, an interesting idea. These two sections, they're not really, it's the same seed void. This is partly so that they can just simply spread apart to accommodate increasing levels of complexity in the horizontal dimension, which shows the manifest universe, first as a phrase that stands for the grandeur of nature, and then opens up and blossoms out into mantras. Why do we have two sections, though? I mean, what is the idea behind that? Well, in Hindu philosophy, there is the term Brahman, which means the unmanifest, supporting the world as a whole, and by extension, I mean the whole universe as a whole. This Atman, so that's Brahman, that's Atman, stillness. It's the same stillness, almost. There's internal biases that will show up in this series that I will explain. So this is the stillness in you and me and living beings. This is the stillness in the world. This is the inherent goodness and virtue. Really is virtue. The Tao Te Ching, pronounced like D without a vowel. The Tao Te Ching is the foundational scripture of Taoism. And so this, you can think of this as the original virtue of nature, the original just simply inherent goodness. This is a good universe. This is a virtuous cosmos. Now, this is virtual Aum. These are layers. This is why one of the motivations for me to do this series was to put across the idea that instead of just a simple, seamless state of potentiality, there actually have to be gradations of that in order for the laws of gravity, presumably, to have some kind of foothold, to emerge from the unmanifest, backed by capabilities in these virtual layers, gradations. So that's what I've tried to depict here. And these are layers 1, the highest and deepest layer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm sorry. It's layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Silly me. So this is the lowest and shallowest and densest layer. It's still potentiality. It's still unmanifest. But it's because there's other layers in between this and this, the highest and deepest, that make this the so-called lowest layer. And so the same thing is true here. There's a descent from layers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. And then, so these are the closest to manifestation, these lowest and shallowest layers. I sometimes call them the expressions of the dull edge of oneness. There's still potentiality for oneness, but they're virtually separated from the highest and deepest layer. Virtual Ra, virtual Aum. By the way, Aum, 2 syllables, even though these right here are not meant to be pronounced out loud. This is silent, this is non-vibratory. But when Aum sounds out later on as part of the mantras, this is what backs it up. Same thing with Ra. And it is important to have 1 syllable here, 2 syllables here. And you'll see why later on. So now, if this is virtue in its inherent goodness, this is virtue here. It's sort of this, it's like it's leaning on virtual Ra, leaning on virtual Aum. This is the quickening agent in which it offers up, it creates, or rather it quickens the stillness into having, and then thus presenting us with these denser, shallower layers. Or else, if there was nothing, otherwise, what would be the quickening agent for stillness? So my proposal is that indeed virtue, in its aspect of lively integrity, is the agent that quickens the stillness into activity, into producing the universe and producing people in the universe and all beings. So this will be filled in, these will be filled in 2 different language mixes. I felt that was really necessary to get a distinction between archetypal, that is expressing archetypes, and we will show what the 5 deep nature archetypes are. It's only 5. A little bit later, but it's enough to know that these are supportive, they're capabilities of what vibrates, what does vibrate, what does move. And so these dual marks mean that these are virtual dualities. In other words, they support duality, such as the yin and yang. That's a perfect expression. Archetypal expression of duality is the yin and yang, which is a dynamic kind of depiction. They're always in motion. They're related to each other, complementary opposites. So you wouldn't equate yin and yang with something like good and evil, which are oppositional opposites. They don't work together. They oppose each other. That's not an example of yin and yang. But the trough of a wave and the crest of a wave is, and I'll reiterate that in the next talk. So everything is supported by this. This is the foundation. Stillness, the stillness of seed void. And so, is there anything else I need to tell you here? I think we're okay for now. I will reiterate certain things as we go through, as we fill in these layers, and I explain how there is actually 2 different kinds of duality that it supports. This is probably the deepest conceptual arena for this series, is the idea of these layers of capability. Okay, so now what we're going to do next, before we go into Totem 1 proper, and then Totem 1 through 7 is the linguistic duration of the series. Totems 8 and 9 take that and move it into a new direction that completes the series. But these are supporting everything. And so before I get into Totem 1, we have the 5 central symbols that are at the basis of Totems 1 through 5. And in particular, the symbol for Totem 1 is going to be important because it reveals something about the yin and yang that we don't expect. There's something hidden in the very yin-yang symbol, hidden in plain sight, there's a way to bring it forth, and then, oh, I see it now. So that's going to be kind of intriguing. So join me for the next talk, which is on the symbol cluster for the first 5 totems. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you're stimulated by some of these ideas. And let's go forth and discover all about what these totems can yield forth for us, and we'll see how we do. Thank you so much. I'll see you then for the symbol cluster talk.